In 1969, New York City was fighting segregation. Hispanics, African Americans, women, everyone. The pursuit of equality that came in a rush after the death of Martin Luther King gave citizens a feeling of euphoria for the future. This furtherment in the ideals of some citizens wasn't mirrored by the police department. The Stonewall Inn was a mafia-owned and run bar, with heavily watered-down drinks, and cleaning glasses was done by dunking the glasses in a rusty tub. It was regularly raided by the NYPD. At 1:20 a.m., Saturday, June 28th, in Greenwich Village on Christopher Street in 1969, it began as a regular police raid. The lights turned on as the NYPD entered, warning people to stop dancing. All dressed as female were taken into a side room to be undressed by female officers to determine gender. Standard procedure was to line every man up and check identification. Immediately, discomfort ran rampant, lesbians reporting that officers felt them up inappropriately. The women and drag queens started refusing to undress, the men refusing to show identification. The police decided to take the majority in. Those who were not arrested were released from the front door. They stayed in front of the inn as others joined them, watching. Quickly, it grew to 100 or 150 in numbers. Police forcefully shoved other released patrons out of the bar. Patrons rose immediately, flamboyantly posing and saluting the NYPD. The first patrol wagon arrived to take away mafia members and gays. First, mafia members were escorted to the wagon, to the cheers of the crowd. As the employees were loaded, the mob began to sing "We Shall Overcome" and shout gay power slogans. They grew to intense hostility. An officer shoved a transvestite who hit him over the head with her purse. The crowd booed. First pennies, then bottles were thrown at the patrol wagon, and rumors ran rampant that patrons within the bar were still being beaten. A woman in handcuffs described as a typical New York butch began to swear and shout at the officers, scuffling, complaining her handcuffs were too tight. After being struck on the head with a baton, she turned to the bystanders and said, "Why don't you guys do something?" After an officer put her in the wagon, the crowd went berserk. The NYPD attempted to dismantle the crowd, knocking people down, igniting bystanders further. Some escaped the wagon when the police left them unattended. The crowd attempted to overturn it, which is when the police took their remaining cars and went to get help. Someone shouted, "The bar had been raided because they hadn't paid off the cops." Another replied, "Let's pay 'em off then." The mob began to throw coins at the remaining police officers in front of the inn. The crowd had grown to 500 people, attracted by the noise, most of whom were anti-war protesters, such as David Van Ronk, who'd had enough of the NYPD's scare tactic. We all had a collective feeling, like we'd had enough of this shit. It wasn't anything tangible anybody said to anyone else. It was just kind of like everything over the years had come to a head on that one particular night, in the one particular place. And it was not an organized demonstration. Everyone in the crowd felt like we were never going to go back. It was like the last straw. It was time to reclaim something that had always been taken from us. All kinds of people, all different reasons, but mostly it was just total outrage, anger, sorrow, and everything combined, and everything just kind of ran its course. It was the police that were doing most of the destruction. We were really trying to get back in Stonewall and break free, and we all felt that we had freedom at last, or freedom at least to show that we demanded freedom. We weren't going to be walking meekly in the night and letting them shove us around. It's like standing your ground for the first time, and in a really strong way. And that's what caught the police by surprise. There was something in the air. Freedom, a long time overdue, and we were going to fight for it. It took different forms, but the bottom line was, we weren't going to go away. And we didn't. Michael Fader. To quote the Mattachine Society, It catered largely to a group of people who are not welcome in or cannot afford other places of homosexual social gathering. The Stonewall became home to these kids. When it was raided, they fought for it. That, and the fact that they had nothing to lose other than the most tolerant and broad-minded gay place in town, explains why. Garbage, rocks, bricks, and bottles were thrown. A parking meter was used as a battering ram to get into the inn. You've been treating us like shit all these years? Now it's our turn. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. Sylvia Rivera. The crowd started setting garbage on fire and throwing it at police inside. Demonstrators broke through the window, and the police unholstered their pistols. The doors opened, and police threatened to shoot. The standstill lasted 45 minutes when the TPF arrived. The Tactical Police Force, or Riot Control, arrived to rescue the police officers. One had a cut eye, others bruised from the debris. A man walking his dog who passed the scene reported this. The cops were totally humiliated. This never, ever happened. They were angrier than I guess they'd ever been, because everybody else had rioted. The fairies weren't supposed to riot. No group had ever forced cops to retreat before, so the anger was just enormous. I mean, they wanted to kill. Another rioter claimed, all I could see about who was fighting was that it was the transvestites, and they were fighting furiously. The TBF formed a phalanx to drive the mob off the streets, while the crowd openly mocked the police, forming kick lines. Just as the kick line got into full routine, the TPF advanced again. One member of the riot recalled this. I just can't get that one sight out of my mind. The cops with the nightsticks and the kick line on the other side. It was the most amazing thing. And all of a sudden, the kick line, which I guess was a spoof on the machoism, I think that's when I felt rage. Because people were getting smashed with bats. And for what? A kick line! The police began to chase participants through the streets, only to end up running away from them moments later. By 4 a.m., the streets had been almost cleared. Throughout the morning, people gathered throughout Christopher Park. A commenter described the morning as such. There was a certain beauty in the aftermath of the riot. It was obvious, at least to me, that a lot of people were really gay. And this was our street. 13 people had been arrested. Some in the crowd had been hospitalized, and 4 cops were injured. Almost everything within and surrounding the inn was broken. The next night, rioting broke out again. The gay community was joined by anti-police protesters, curious bystanders, and even some tourists. Thousands of people gathered, causing garbage fires and damaging police vehicles. At 2 a.m., the TPF arrived again. Street battling continued for 2 hours. Activity was sporadic Monday and Tuesday due to rain. Despite this, police and activists got into several spats. Not all within the gay community were pleased. In the words of Randy Wicker, screaming queens, forming chorus lines, and kicking went against everything I wanted people to think about homosexuals. That we were a bunch of drag queens in the village, acting disorderly and tacky and cheap. The primary concern was that the violent Stonewall riots would set back the cause. On Wednesday, the Village Voice, a local paper, offered several insults to the rioters, calling them limprists, Sunday follies, and forces of faggotry. 750 people showed up outside their office that night and threatened to burn it down. As one witness summarized, the word is out. Christopher Street shall be liberated. The fags have had it with oppression. The riots sparked into the modern gay rights movement, becoming peaceful. The Gay Liberation Front was formed, as was the Gay Activist Alliance, and Gay Pride. It's remembered as pushing back, saying no, and standing up. Stonewall is not just a violent gay rights riot. It is what happens when we oppress others into submission for centuries.